the movie that we're crowdfunding on Indiegogo right now to make, not only will it contain all the evidence showing that Canada didn't confederate, Canada doesn't have a constitution, Canada is not a sovereign nation, but for the last half hour or so of the movie, we're going to explain to the people how they can actually hold a constitutional convention, seat a de jure government under their own constitution in all the provinces, and then if they so choose to, hold a constitutional convention for those provinces to seat a federal authority properly. And the three most important words of any constitution are the same ones that you see in the American Constitution. The starting phrase is "we, the people," and the gentleman's name was Russell Rogers Smith. Now, Russell Rogers Smith, a very interesting chap. He was the one that actually wrote the three clauses that Mackenzie King took to England that were actually inserted verbatim into the Statute of Westminster.
And he was Canadian?
He was Canadian. He was a constitutionalist.
Okay.
And from Saskatchewan, of all places. But he was a constitutional specialist. And he wrote a couple of very interesting books, one in the 1930s, and then his most famous work, Ho Canada, was written in 1965.
On my patio, there are only two rules. Rule number 1, there are no rules. Rule number 2, when in doubt, refer to rule number 1.
This is Gary Gnu, and the No Gnu's is Good Gnu Show. The only TV Gnu's program guaranteed to contain no Gnu's whatsoever. I'm not always a sarcastic asshole, but when I am, you can be sure it's a Friday and we're on the patio.
I am so worn out from this Kavanaugh thing. I didn't realize how stressed I was until it was over and the votes were in and he was confirmed, and then this just wave of relief washed over me, and I'm so tired. Guys, I'm so tired. Okay, this is going to be a potluck of things, some of which I might revisit for a longer video in the future. The first thing I want to talk about is Canadian apathy. It's pretty tremendously bad. There was this story from this. It's actually from the Catholic Register. And automatically, you know, people don't trust the Catholic Register because it's the Catholic Register. So they've got an agenda and they're going to lie, right? So this story went around on Twitter and elsewhere that the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto is working out a, quote, roadmap to allow doctors to counsel children into medically assisted death, euthanasia, killing themselves with a doctor in the room. Children under 18. The Toronto Sick Kids Hospital. And the shills came out and said, don't believe everything you read. This isn't true. The president of the Canadian Medical Association actually said it was a vile, disgusting piece of propaganda and he demands it be removed. That sort of thing. I checked it out and it is true. It is true. I had to respond to so many shills because, you see, shills in Canada understand the psychology of Canadians and they understand confirmation bias. I have heard that Trump is a master of using confirmation bias in his speeches and his rallies, etc. But I swear, nobody is better at using confirmation bias than the Canadian media establishment, and obviously the shills and pundits that are also really deeply ensconced. You know, it's so bad in Canada that I don't think you have to pay very many people to go around and exhibit this pathological apathy and pathological denial. I think people are so trained in it, they do it for free. And they do it automatically like human robots, like meat robots. Did you hear that? Did you hear that recording from Faith Goldie when she talked to the people at CP24, the people she had paid thousands of dollars to advertise on, and the guy told her, no, Faith, we're not going to honor the contract. We're returning your money. We won't advertise for you. Faith kept trying to ask him questions, and he just repeated the exact same words over to her, over and over and over. The Canadian brain, sorry for sensible Canadians, you know I'm not talking about you. The Canadian brain, by and large, that is exactly how it works. Black Pilled just did it's a little bit old, his video about, I don't know what they're called. The characters in video games that aren't the main characters, they sort of fill in the scene, and they always act exactly the same way every time, no matter what. Like, you can come into the scene on the video game and you know they're going to do something and then exit to the left or whatever. Canadians are those things, mostly. We're trained. Okay, let me move on. This story came out, and it's 100% true. It's in the British Medical Journal. Let me show you. And co-sponsored by all of these entities right here. Applied Psychology at the University of Toronto, the Bioethics Department at the Hospital for Sick Children, the Department of Pediatrics, the University of Toronto, Pediatric Advanced Care Team, the Hospital for Sick Children, Toronto, Ontario, Emily's House Children's Hospice, Toronto, Ontario, Departments of Pediatrics and Family and Community Medicine, University of Toronto. And medically assisted, okay, they say medical assistance in dying, MAID, that's what they call it. And here's the abstract of the paper, okay? While MAID is currently available to capable patients in Canada who are 18 or older, a small but important subsection of the population our hospital serves, we write our policy with an eye to the near future when capable young people may gain access to MAID. Thus, this paper is intended as a roadmap through the still emerging legal and ethical landscape of pediatric MAID. So it's 100% real. Doctors at all those places that I just named, and it might not be many doctors, I think there's a lot of bureaucrats and policymakers involved. They are trying to find a way to allow people under the age of 18 to choose to kill themselves in the hospital. And that was just the abstract. I don't pay for a membership at the British Medical Journal site. But the Catholic Register, who made the original article that caused the stir, they must, because they know other things from the full article that I can't gain access to on my limited ability to read it. And they say that the plan is, in a flowchart that outlines how a medical induced death would occur at sick kids, authors Carrie DeMichaelis, Randy Zlotnick, Shaw, and Adam Rappaport do not mention conversation with family or parents about how the child dies until after the death occurs in the, quote, reflection period. So either the doctors just didn't bother to put that in their flow chart, or they have no intention of consulting the parents until after the deed is done. I lost it when I read this. I can't think of anything quite as evil as that. Because what I am picturing in my head is my depressed teen, maybe depressed because they have an illness even. I'm taking them to the hospital, I'm waiting out in the waiting room, taking them home again, and this happens regularly. And unbeknownst to me, the doctor has talked my child in to medically assisted death. So one day, I take my child in for their appointment, and at the end, out comes a nurse, because you know the doctor doesn't have the balls to come out and do it himself or herself. Out comes a nurse or some bureaucrat or somebody with a clipboard, and they say, "Oh, Mom, can we talk to you for a minute?" And they tell me that my child is dead because my child decided to kill themselves and today was the day. Imagine that scenario. There is nothing more evil than that. I know that evil things happen to children. And technically and viscerally, they are worse. Child rape and human trafficking and killing a child, obviously. But this is bureaucratic, cold, calculated, premeditated murder that the state is weighing out. It's writing about it in journals. And then one day it's going to be sprung on parents. And perhaps the parents will know nothing about it till it's too late. I can't deal with this. So when I retweeted it and I put a better headline on it to get people's attention, I had all kinds of people telling me, oh, no, be reasonable. This can't be what it seems. It isn't what it seems. You're not reading that right. This is wrong. I work in the healthcare field and this will never happen. Wake up, Canadians. Euthanasia happens. I made a video not long ago about a guy named Roger who is he's chronically ill. He has a low quality of life and he's in the hospital. And the hospital wants to get him out of the bed. They want the bed back. So what they're telling Roger is it's going to cost you $1,500 a day to stay in this room, or $1,500 a week, I don't know. Or you can kill yourself and we'll help you. And of course they say it in a smart, hey Raj, are you feeling kind of depressed? You're pretty depressed, aren't you, Roger? Yeah, you're kind of in a bad situation, eh, Roger? Well, don't forget, I'm just reminding you, Roger. I'm just reminding you, we can help you kill yourself. I mean, you're in a tight spot, Roger, and I wouldn't mention it except for it seems like a way to get out of this. Now, Roger's an adult and he's fighting back. What about your kid? What about your 16-year-old kid or your 15-year-old kid or your 12-year-old kid? What chance do they have? And these Canadians on Twitter trying to pretend I'm misreading what I'm reading, trying to pretend the Catholic Register has a sinister agenda by publishing this. The Canadian Medical Association president demanding a retraction. Well, I kept posting over and over the link to the abstract, which shows clearly that it's really happening. It's really being built, this roadmap, and multiple agencies with tons of bureaucrats are involved in trying to smooth this over. Wait, there's another part in there I don't think I read. Right here. We propose that an opportunity exists for MAID-providing institutions to reduce social stigma surrounding this practice. You know what the unethical jerks trying to tell me I was reading it wrong said? They said, I'm not paying enough attention to this part, but not without potentially serious consequences for practitioners and institutions themselves. That's the part you want to focus on? Oh, and guess what? Oh, you're damn right. This will have consequences for the medical personnel and bureaucracy that's involved in it. I can't even imagine what would happen if anyone did that to my child. I have one child. And if someone had gotten to her when she was under 18 and convinced her to kill herself at the hospital because she was depressed, nobody involved in that process would be safe from me. Nobody. And the funny thing is, these people trying to tell me I'm overreacting, trying to tell me, you didn't read the next sentence where it says not without serious consequences for healthcare professionals. Yeah, you know what that means? That means they're concerned about preserving their anonymity. And in the Catholic Register article, they talk about that. The doctors don't want to be known by name. Of course they don't. So that's Canadian apathy for you. You're probably wrong. I'm a paramedic and there's no way this will happen. You're leaving out parts of that article. Please remove it. It's a lie. It's not a lie. It's true. I did my homework. So Canadians, wake up. Do I sound like an alarmist? I want to talk about this before I move on. People have pointed out to me that the reason so many Canadians hate Trump is the same reason they hate Alex Jones. Too bombastic. They don't like the way they talk. They don't like their tone of voice. They don't like their word choices. Yeah, we have to try and pretend we're in kindergarten. Have you heard the way Justin Trudeau talks? In Canada, we love children. Sometimes that means children have to die. Okay, I'm not going to go on. But is that what you want me to say? Because here, let me illustrate my point by bringing to you the next story. And I want to show you the lame headline they put on this thing compared to what they really should put on it for the import of it. Look at this headline and look at the picture that accompanies the story. Sidewalk Toronto has only one beneficiary, and it is not Toronto. Boring. Skip, turn the page, don't even read it. Right? This is a story about Google wanting to get a smart city in Toronto. It wants a chunk of Toronto to basically rule over. Do you remember we talked about in my last video the whole mind control thing and the Internet of Things? Basically, as I can understand it, this smart city chunk of Toronto they want to build is a smart city. It is an Internet of Things city from bottom to top. The guy who wrote this article in the Globe and Mail with that horrible headline, which I'm sure he didn't choose, and that horrible image, which will make anyone turn the page, is Jim Balsillie, and he used to be the CEO and perhaps even the owner, I don't know really, of BlackBerry. BlackBerry was one of the first most successful smartphones, cell phones, right? And they put them out of business because Jim Balsillie appears to have some ethics. Because he wrote a great article, and I'm going to link to this in the description box. Same with the other article. He wrote this article in the Globe and Mail, which you should read the whole thing. And here's some highlights of it. A privately controlled smart city infrastructure upends traditional models of citizenship because you cannot opt out of a city or a society that practices mass surveillance. Foreign corporate interests tout new technocratic efficiencies while shrewdly occluding their unprecedented power grab. As the renowned technologist Evgeny Morozov said, quote, that the city is also the primary target of big tech is no accident. If these firms succeed in controlling its infrastructure, they need not worry about much else. Especially with the Internet of Things, where, as I described to you yesterday, they put chips or readers or sensors or whatever it is, data gathering sensors, in everything. They sell it to the public by saying, if we put it in concrete, then we automatically get notified if potholes develop or if cracks appear in sidewalks. Oh, sure, that's what you're using it for, right? You're not using it to record footsteps. You're not using it to listen to anything. You're not using it. Who knows what they're using it for? And they're capable of all kinds of things. And Jim Balsillie continues. In a recent brief to the federal government, the National Research Council warned that Canada was at risk of becoming a nation of, quote, data cows, leaking our most valuable national resource to companies such as Amazon, Google, and others. Exactly. We talked about interoceptive data yesterday or the day before in my other video, and the fact that they can actually interfere with our free will if they have enough readouts on what we're doing. When you think about it, have you seen the movie Ready Player One? It's a complete immersive experience. Well, imagine a smart city recording every single thing in the environment, including the people. And then remember I told you about optogenetics, where they can, even without your knowledge, change receptors in your brain so that it communicates through LED lights to your environment. So they can tell every single thing about you. They can tell what you're looking at. They can tell if your heart rate goes up in response to it. They can essentially read your mind. They can hear what you hear, see what you see. They can record your every step. Imagine a smart city. They could theoretically take the data gained from a smart city and make a 3D virtual reality version of that same city that runs parallel. For example, like, my mind goes crazy. I just have a crazy imagination. I could imagine a scenario where they sell subscriptions to people to just eavesdrop, essentially, on some of the people in that smart city. Kind of a Second Life. Do you remember that primitive sort of video virtual reality game they had online, Second Life? People got really into that. They actually bought things for their house. They bought clothing items for the virtual character on the computer. Imagine if the Second Life characters were actually real people living inside of a smart city. And maybe they didn't even know. Maybe they didn't know. And maybe you, as the gamer, could have things happen in their environment. Look, this is all just total fiction. This is my imagination. And I'm not saying that's the intention of what they're doing. I'm just trying to give you a picture of how absolutely comprehensive the smart city proposal is for Toronto. What else did Balsillie say? Balsillie, what a great name. Okay. It says, Waterfront was undeterred. Waterfront is like the name of the organization planning this, by the way. Waterfront was undeterred by such warnings and rushed to create a contact with Sidewalk without any input from city staff. The agreement was so flawed, Waterfront Toronto's board tried to keep it secret for months, while Toronto City Council got a report making it clear the council didn't know what Waterfront was doing. The unsuspecting public and public office holders were alerted to it by the board's only elected official, City Councillor Denzel Minan Wong, who said, quote, I know enough about the agreement that I think you would like to know more about the agreement. Thank God for that person. And what else? He goes on, the charitable among us would call these approaches incompetent, given that Waterfront has no expertise or experience commercializing either IP or data. The more astute would say this is a pattern of deliberate effort to make sure that Sidewalk comprehensively claims all the project-related IP and systematically extends its control of citizen data. After all, a Waterfront board member recently quit in protest over their relinquishing too much control to Sidewalk. So you see, this is the point, another point I want to make. There's always people, after something horrible happens, like child euthanasia gets installed and is happening, or Waterfront, or the Google Smart City is implemented and actually starting to do horrible, nefarious things. There's always a huge segment of the population that runs around like, how could this have happened? How could nobody have warned us? Those people drive me crazy because, as I said about the sick kids thing, people are trying to warn you. People are out there talking about it. And you're calling them overreacting, tinfoil hat wearing, not reading the paper right. It's an outright lie. You go into deep denial mode, apathetic Canadians. This is the stage of development of both of the projects I've mentioned so far tonight, where we can stop it. But you have to believe people like me, people like Jim Balsillie, people like the Catholic Register. When we tell you that this is happening, you have to believe us. I don't care if you don't like the fact it's coming from a Catholic organization. I don't care if you think that I sound like an alarmist. I don't care if you say Jim Balsillie might just be jealous because his company didn't do as well as Google or Apple or whatever. All of that's bullshit. Pardon me. All of that's baloney. It's crap. You're in denial. You're apathetic. You want someone else to do something about this. So your easy way out is to say, geez, I should have listened, I guess. Should have taken that blonde chick seriously when she was acting like a crazy person on YouTube. Yeah, why don't you look it up yourself? I've tried to show you. I've tried to prove it. It's really happening. Nobody believes it. And then once you've got a city of cyborgs, basically, in this smart city, who are killing their kids in the Toronto Sick Kids Hospital because these kids are so depressed because their every move is being monitored by Google. And by virtue of that, Google and all kinds of advertisers are nudging them this way and nudging them that way and turning them all transgender because there's huge money in transgender for the medical system and in the fashion system and the makeup system and the wig system. Like, think about how much money they're raking in from transgender kids. It's horrifying that we are letting corporations take over every facet of our lives for money so they can make profit. I know this is supposed to be a happy day because of Kavanaugh, and I am happy. I am happy about that because hopefully things will turn around in the States. The United States is the only country standing in between all of us living in smart cities while our kids, if they get depressed, we're terrified to take them to the doctor because the last 5 people we knew who took their kids in from therapy ended up with a headstone instead of a child. I don't know if Canada can be saved. I've said it so many times. Yeah, we have Maxime Bernier. But we have a giant army of video game characters who are pre-programmed to do the same moves every time you walk in a room. They are happy to exist on their little loop. Go to work, come home, burn your dinner, have a beer, watch the hockey, go to bed. Get up, go to work, come home, burn your dinner, have a beer, watch the hockey, go to bed. And even worse than that, they like to get mad at anybody who tries to wake them up. Not to mention the censorship regime here in Canada. Not to mention how cozy we are with China. Not to mention the massive influx of refugees and people from the third world. And that's about to get worse too. But this is a half an hour long. I'll save that for another day. Suffice to say, Ahmed Hussein and George Soros have recently opened yet another NGO, partnered with Frank Giustra to bring even more people to Canada, where we already can't house them, give them jobs, or teach them English. Okay, everybody, I'm going to stop talking now. Thanks very much. Please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't. Share the video, and I'd love to hear your comments. You know, I always read all of them. Thanks a lot. Peace out.
Who needs special powers? The politicians. They're the ones who want special powers naturally because they're in the power game. And what they can get from Ottawa, they will have more in Charlottetown, in Quebec City, in Victoria, BC. That's the game of politics, power.
Of hatred, politics and greed. But I know I wasn't alone when I cried on the day Johnny Cash died. Yes, I know.
I remember Harper when he was governor a few years ago. He was in an interview in Calgary and he made claim that the federal government is a de facto government, which means it's an unlawful and illegal government.
One who cared, a heart that big, well, that's
I'm just a frostbitten Canadian boy here to thin the thickness of your skin. Every Saturday night, 9 o'clock, Politically Speaking with Duke Willis, Facebook's only live multicam talk show.
Canadians, Americans, members of the Commonwealth, and patriots the world over. Welcome to the show that tells you what they won't. Exposing the fake news, conspiracies, and corruption within institutions that govern our lives, and red-pilling the nations one fact at a time. It's Weathering the Storm with your host, Canada's Red Pill, Billy Joyce.
Good day, folks, and welcome to another show. I'm kind of smiling, but I guess really I don't have a reason to smile here in Canada with what happened yesterday. Justin Trudeau, Ahmed Hussein, and Chrystia Freeland, I think it was Ahmed Hussein that was there, but they all signed the UN Global Compact on Migration. The UN Global Compact on Migration. Now, I've talked about this in past videos. I want to bring up something new today on those topics. Now, before I get to that, I'd like to thank the following donors, people that sent e-transfers in the last month. Christopher D. twice, Daniel M. twice, Louise W. twice. Through PayPal, Paulette C. twice, Dana H., Christopher J., Sandy S., and Isabella R. I would also like to sincerely apologize to two different people who sent checks and cards. I got the checks a while ago. They were deposited a while ago. I kept the cards near where I do my work, and somehow they disappeared. And now that I've deposited the checks and I can't find the cards, I have no idea who it is that sent me those checks. I'd have to contact my local credit union. So I apologize for not remembering your name, but to the two people that sent me checks, I appreciate every gift very much. It's much appreciated. It's very humbling. It certainly helps with everything that I'm doing. It helps with now that I have a printer and I'm printing stuff off, and it's rewarding to me. I guess it's rewarding to know that some of the subscribers are willing to actually donate cold hard cash to help support the work that I do. So that being said, thank you all very much, and God bless you all very much. Maxime Bernier took to Twitter earlier today, and he pointed out just what this global compact for migration really means. And he pointed us to a very interesting video with a former United Nations lawyer, someone who I would quantify as an expert on the matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Maxime Bernier's Twitter feed. This morning he tweeted, LibGov adopts UN language. Liberal government adopts United Nations language. We don't have an immigration system anymore, but a migration system. Immigration refers to foreigners coming to live in our country. Migration refers to people going from one place to another. There is no distinction between here and abroad. And of course he posted here 1, which means that there's more to come, and he continues. That's the goal of the Global Compact, to normalize and facilitate mass migrations under UN supervision, ultimately remove the distinction between citizen and migrant, and give everyone equal rights and equal access to services. Note also the hashtag for migration, and if you follow that thread, it takes you here, and they have the hashtag for migration. You see it right here. For migration, global goals. For migration. And then Bernier finishes off a series of tweets with, an immigration system is a set of rules by which we select foreigners and welcome them as citizens for the benefit of our country. A migration system is a way to deal with the movement of people crossing our borders. We've just gone from first to second type of policy. And what's troubling with this is that Canadians are oblivious to this going on. The majority of Canadians only started picking up on the Global Compact for Migration maybe 2 weeks ago. It wasn't discussed in Parliament. There was no debate really in Parliament. There was no vote, as far as I can tell, in Parliament. The Conservatives only started mentioning this last week. Andrew Scheer only really started getting on the topic last week. And because the mainstream media tries to hide Maxime Bernier from the Canadian people as much as possible. Not many people were aware that Maxime Bernier has been criticizing this for a couple of weeks now, possibly even closer to a month. Now, I'm not going to go, you can go to my previous videos to see my thoughts on the Migration Compact, but I wanted to draw attention to one tweet from Maxime Bernier today, where Mario Dumont, who's an on-air personality with TVA, which is a French television station here in Canada. TVA, actually, it surprised me. I was impressed with TVA that they ran this interview, because the interview that they did, and I'm going to take you through that interview bit by bit, because I think the majority of what this man said in this interview needs to be heard. And the majority of mainstream media, I mean, TVA, I guess you could consider them mainstream in the French community across Canada. But like, for example, where I live, we don't get TVA. I only get it through the internet. So what we get mostly in French is Radio-Canada, and Radio-Canada is the French subsidiary of CBC, which is state-funded. So they're not going to be putting this Monsieur Sirois on air anytime soon. Nor are they going to push any of the notions or any of the ideas or any of the theories that he is going to present in the video that I'm going to show you. So I thought it was important to share this with you. Maxime Bernier says, entrevue à Mario Dumont sur le pacte mondial pour l'immigration. Ce pacte-là, c'est un piège. What that says is interview, Mario Dumont's interview on the Global Pact on Migration. That pact there is a trap. That's what the tweet says. So when I went to watch the video, and right here you can see, right here, this is Mario Dumont, and this gentleman right here is André Sirois. It says avocat auprès de l'ONU, ex-conseiller juridique auprès de la Commission de l'immigration et du statut de réfugié. So he used to be, well, it says here, lawyer to the United Nations and former counselor to the Commission on Immigration and Refugee Status. So it's someone who's very familiar with immigration, someone who's very familiar with the United Nations, and someone who has a position on the Global Compact that you're not going to hear in the mainstream media, and it's quite alarming. So we've seen a lot of countries not sign this Global Migration Compact, but we've seen a lot of countries sign it, including mine, Canada. And Canadians are upset. And I'm going to try to organize a Yellow Jacket rally in the area. So if you're from my area, if you're from Cape Breton or even Guysborough, Antigonish, if you're from any of those places, please send me an email, wtjoyce@hotmail.com. Send me an email, it's in the description of this video, and let me know if you'd be interested in participating in a Yellow Jacket march this weekend, possibly in Port Hawkesbury, Nova Scotia, Saturday. If that's something that interests you, I would like you to email me at wtjoyce@hotmail.com. I'd like to have people there with smartphones. I'd like to have people there with video devices. I'd like to have people there with... and it's going to be a peaceful protest. There's going to be nothing violent about it. There's going to be nothing rude about it. There's going to be nothing ignorant about it. It's going to be Canadians expressing their concerns over the United Nations Migration Compact and globalization in general. Unchecked immigration, illegal immigration, foreign aid. It's also about helping our veterans, helping our pensioners, helping Canadians and putting Canada first. That's what I would like the Yellow Jacket movement to become in Canada. We're not at the point where we're gonna go flipping cars and burning things. I don't think that's the appropriate way to go about it. If we can get some media attention, you just never know what could happen. So this Global Compact on Migration, Monsieur Sirois here, who's a lawyer to the United Nations, had some pretty interesting things to say. And Mario Dumont, the host of the show, kind of threw it at him and said, "So, what do you think of this global compact on migration?" And I'm going to go through this. It's a 10-minute video. I might not go through the whole thing because I've already watched it and I have a good idea of what's in it. But I just want to give you a rough idea of what this guy's saying, who's a lawyer to the United Nations, and I would say an expert on the topic. Listen to what he has to say, and I'll pause and translate as we go.
Je pense que, tout simplement, il n'y a rien à comprendre là-dedans. C'est un texte qui est très mal écrit, qui est rempli de fautes. On ne sait pas où on s'en va. On le dit clairement, d'ailleurs, parce qu'on dit dans le pacte qu'on...
So what he's saying there is it's a document that's not well read, it's not well written, it's full of errors, and it's not clear as to where the countries that are signing it are actually going with it. That's how he starts off his explanation on this compact.
On adopte le pacte, puis ensuite on dit qu'on va déterminer ce qu'il faut faire.
We're going to adopt the pact and then determine what it is that we need to do.
Et déterminer les raisons.
And determine
Alors,
reasons.
On ne sait pas du tout où on s'en va avec ça.
So
sauf
no
que
idea where it
il y a
is we're going with it.
d'informations piégées là-dedans. Ce pacte-là, c'est un piège.
Oh, I want to rewind that and let you listen to it again.
Il y a plein d'informations piégées là-dedans. Ce pacte-là, c'est un piège.
There is tons of trap information, l'information piégée. It's like there are many traps set inside that document, and he's saying that that's what this is, a trap.
Tout simplement, là. Pour résumer simplement, c'est ça. C'est absolument inhabituel comme document des Nations Unies.
Mes questions vont...
He says that it's a completely inhabitual document when it comes to the United Nations. He's rather flabbergasted by the whole thing.
Vos craintes, par exemple, pour le Canada, qui en est un des signataires, qu'est-ce qu'on aurait à craindre?
Now, the host there is asking him, what is it that we'd have to worry about as far as Canada goes? Why is it that we should worry about this Global Compact on Migration?
Deux choses. D'abord, il y a beaucoup de tentatives là-dedans de porter atteinte à la souveraineté des États.
He's saying there that there's a lot of wording inside that document that leads one to believe that they're attacking the sovereignty of nations that have signed on.
Et ça, c'est une première chose. L'autre chose, pour ce qui est du Canada, c'est qu'encore une fois, on considère que le Canada est une vache à lait. Parce que
What he said there is when it comes to Canada, the second thing is that worldwide, Canada is considered a milk cow, vache à lait. In other words, a cash cow, where you come here and you get free money.
Pas oublier qu'une grande majorité des pays, des États qui signent ces documents-là ne les appliquent pas, ne s'en occupent pas et dans ce cas-là ne reçoivent pas d'immigrants, ont des politiques anti-immigrants.
Now what he's saying here is that there are many of these countries that sign these migration pacts that they don't really respect the migration pact. They don't really respect what it is that they're signing. And although this is non-binding, in Canada's case, we usually follow through when we sign things, and it will be binding. So that's what he's getting at there.
Ils n'en recevront jamais en pratique.
So, yeah, and he's saying they'll never ever receive any practically.
D'autre part, il y a plein d'États membres des Nations Unies qui signent des documents comme ça et qui ne les respectent pas.
Saying there are plenty of United Nations member states that sign documents like that and then don't respect them.
Même une fois qu'ils les ont signés. Le Canada les respecte et le Canada paye. Et c'est les pays. C'est qu'il y a là-dedans une phrase que je pourrais vous lire, mais c'est tellement du charabia que ça ne vaut pas la peine.
Saying there's a sentence in there that he'd like to read to you, but it's so insane that he's not going to bother.
Mais il y a une phrase qui dit très clairement que si on l'interprète comme on devrait l'interpréter, le Canada devrait recueillir et s'occuper et aider tous les chômeurs du monde.
What he's saying there is that there's a line inside this document that if one were to read it the way it's written, could imply that Canada has a responsibility to take care of every single unemployed person on the planet. Wrap your head around that.
C'est comme ça que ça peut être interprété. Tous les chômeurs du monde.
He says that's how it can be interpreted. Every unemployed person on the planet.
Qui ont envie de partir de leur pays.
That feel like leaving their country. Of course, that would be important because they'd have to feel like they have to leave their country.
Pas une fois qu'ils sont partis de leur pays.
Et leur trouver de l'emploi ici.
Non seulement ça, d'améliorer leurs conditions dans leur pays.
And they're saying not only would we have to welcome them into our countries and ensure that they have jobs when they get here, we'd also have to ensure to improve the conditions in the countries where they came from with our tax dollars. Is it making sense to you yet? You upset yet? Hey, Canadians? You upset yet? You gonna watch the Flames tonight? The Oilers? The Habs? The Leafs? No one's paying attention to this. I've got friends that claim to be woke who didn't know about the Global Compact on Migration. I mean, I only found out about it a few weeks ago. I had no idea what it was, what the repercussions were, what the ramifications would be, what the long-term impact would be. Why? It wasn't discussed. It wasn't debated. We say we live in a democracy. We say we live in a parliamentary system where things are debated. There's no frickin' debate on this. The globalists decided what was best for Canada without Canadians' consent. Period.
Il y a beaucoup de transferts de fonds du Canada ou des pays signataires vers des pays d'où viennent les migrants.
Now he's saying there's inside this document, it's implied that there will be a transfer of wealth from countries like Canada that sign it over to the countries where people are migrating from.
Mais ce n'est pas précisé et bien sûr, c'est pas quantifié. On peut parler.
But it's not quantified and it's not précisé means it's not pinpointed and it's not quantified per se.
Dans certains cas, de milliards de dollars. Il faut se rendre compte.
There he says it could be in the billions of dollars.
Des chiffres là-dedans. On parle au minimum de 250 millions de personnes en ce moment. Et ça, oui.
Yeah, he's talking, he says there that there's, right now, as we speak, 250 million people worldwide seeking to migrate elsewhere. 250 million. Now, the reports I've read indicate that Canada should be taking anywhere from 5 to 10% of those 250 million. That's right now. That's 25 million people, folks.
Abordons-le. Faisons juste les chiffres. Vous êtes 250 millions, parce que là, on parle en Afrique, dans certaines régions de l'Asie.
So this guy's saying in Africa, certain parts of Asia, he's at 250 million. He's a bit flabbergasted by the whole thing, and I don't blame him. But what does it mean when even someone who works on a major network like TVA was not in the loop enough to bring these things out a month ago, or 3 weeks ago, or 2 months ago, or 3 months ago for that matter? Why wasn't this debated heavily? Why wasn't there a referendum? Why weren't the Canadian people consulted and asked to vote on this? It's like doubling the population. But the problem is we're going to double the population with the workforce we already have, and what's it going to do? It's going to put a strain on us, the working class people who pay taxes, while we bring in all these people from all over the place and have to flip the bill for their social assistance or their welfare or for their education. And then they talk, if you go read the Global Compact, talks about transportability of services. So what? They're going to be able to come here, draw an unemployment claim, work 15 weeks, then draw unemployment and go back to their countries and draw unemployment while they're there? Canadians can't even do that. A Canadian on unemployment insurance, if he leaves the country, is disqualified for his employment insurance for the duration of the time that he's outside the country. But it looks now in this migration pact, we're going to make every effort possible to make this happen. So what else is the sir saying here?
Sur la prochaine décennie, d'un phénomène majeur, là, beaucoup de migrants potentiels.
Beaucoup de migrants potentiels, d'autant plus qu'on va les encourager comme ça, immigrants. C'est plus une immigration. Pour ça, Trump a raison, c'est une invasion.
And there you go. This guy here just said it's no longer a migration. He says President Trump is right. It's an invasion. And I could go on. This video is 10 minutes long, but I'm pretty sure this lawyer to the United Nations, I would consider him an expert in the field. He's not just talking out of his butt. He's not just pulling this out of nowhere. He's not just saying things to say things. My question is, how can our government allow this? Maxime Bernier is speaking out against it, but it's signed. How many people can come into the country between now and election time next fall in 2019? Because it's one thing to have immigration. We've had immigration here for a while. I'm sure everyone's heard of Omar Khadr. Omar Khadr was the guy that was sent to Guantanamo Bay as a teenager because he was involved in fighting on behalf of Al-Qaeda back when he was a teenager. His father, who moved to Canada, I presume legally, who probably came to Canada and said, yeah, I'm a peaceful Muslim. Yeah, I'm going to come here and integrate. And then when his kid is 13, 14 years old, sends him off to Pakistan to train with Osama bin Laden to become a translator for Al-Qaeda. And these are immigrants that came here legally. And they had, Omar Khadr was born in Canada. He was born in Toronto. And then we paid him $10.5 million because apparently we didn't do enough for him while he was at Guantanamo Bay. So to avoid a $20 million lawsuit, we paid the guy $10 million. Well, now Omar Khadr is looking for a passport to travel, permission to speak to his sister. His sister has vocally supported Al-Qaeda. And now Omar Khadr is saying, well, I'm in Alberta, and I know I got $10.5 million, but I still feel imprisoned. It feels no different in Guantanamo Bay. That's what he said. Go read these articles. I want to go to Mecca. You want to go to Mecca? Yeah, go to Mecca and stay there. You want to move to Canada? You're born in Canada. What the hell are you doing going to Pakistan to fight for Al-Qaeda? Someone's lying somewhere. But again, it comes back maybe to the doctrine of taqiyya. The doctrine of taqiyya, where devout Muslims have no problem at all going into countries and lying about being willing to integrate into their society until they have a majority, and then they try to impose a jihad. And if you're watching this video and you don't know what a jihad is, go look it up. J-I-H-A-D. Now, there are some sects of Islam that say that a jihad is an inner jihad. It's a struggle between themselves and sin. But there are other Muslims who consider the jihad a holy war, where the infidel is to be killed. Heck, if you go see Michelle Rempel's YouTube channel, I'm not going to go to it, I'm not going to go to the video, but go to Michelle Rempel's YouTube channel. There's an ISIS fighter who was brought back to Canada 2 years ago. One of his friends in Canada decided to blow the whistle and sent a text message that he received from this former ISIS fighter in Canada, who apparently sent him a text message saying, "No infidels allowed to touch me. I've been free for 2 years and they're not doing anything about it. They're not arresting me because the infidel's not allowed to touch me." So is that what we want? Is that what you want for your grandchildren? Is that what we want for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren? Is that the Canada we want to leave behind? A Canada where, I don't know, 25 to 30 million people who move here and who are here for less than a year or two could possibly influence who runs our country and what culture and what religion and what it is we believe and how we behave and how our women dress and what age our children marry and who our children marry. Because if you don't think it's a possibility, well, then you're not paying attention. And when a former lawyer to the United Nations says that this isn't just a global compact, it's not just a little agreement, it's not just migration, it's an invasion, well, that bothers me. And it should bother you. And it should bother every single person who has any pride at all in Canada. I can guarantee you that World War I, World War II, Korean War, and Afghanistan War veterans, people that have been fighting in the Middle East for 20 years, I can guarantee you they're not happy with the idea of ISIS fighters coming here and receiving government services for their reintegration, while the Canadian veterans that went overseas to fight against these people in the first place can't even get services for their PTSD, can't even get help for their PTSD, can't even be granted the permission to use experimental drugs to treat whatever ailment that they may have. We've got no money for our veterans, But we've got money to bring in 25 million people from God knows where, who believe God knows what, who are willing to do God knows what to God knows who, for God knows what purpose. We're okay with that. And the mainstream media? Silent. You've got I think it's Rosemary Barton or Rosemary Barlow or Rosemary something interviewing Justin Trudeau. Go look that up. CBC's cozy interview with Justin Trudeau, softballing questions like a teenage girl infatuated with the Prime Minister rather than hardballing him. Hardballing questions. No mention of the Global Compact. No mention of what this expert just said. No, we're all supposed to hug, sing Kumbaya, we'll read poems to former ISIS fighters and hopefully reintegrate them into Canadian society. Have you ever heard anything so insane? I haven't. I'm done now.
If you enjoyed this video, you may want to take a look at other videos you find on this page. Don't forget, if you like it, push the subscribe button under this video, and feel free to like and share with all your friends. Follow me on Twitter by following the link on this page. If you want to interact, feel free to post a comment, but please, no obscenities. Thanks for watching. Billy Joyce signing off and reminding you that I'm here to help you weather the storm.
Good morning, Vietnam! Sunday nights at 9. CPR, Canadian Patriot Report, the only live multicam broadcast on Facebook.
Try it on you.
Do you love your country? Do you hate your government? Congratulations. You might be a patriot.
Keeping Canada Canadian is what we're doing.
That's what I'm doing.
Are you ready to stand on guard for thee?
Try it on All right now. Hey.
Actually, can I get a couple minutes with you? Yeah. Tell us what's going on here today. Why we're here.
Why are we here today? January 2nd, myself and two friends came out here to protest our local MP's office regarding about our government supporting returning ISIS fighters and not enforcing our criminal code. Spread the word, brother! There, you just heard what it's about. The song says, we stand on guard for thee, and that's what it's about. Flanders Field is full of Canadians who are weeping in their graves at what's being allowed to happen in this country today.
Let me just give you one sort of example of some of the things I've run into with police forces. Forced suicides or honor killing of young girls amongst brown females in Canada is probably highest here in Ontario, second highest in British Columbia, but the rate here in Ontario is probably the highest of suicides amongst brown Muslim females in the world. So that includes, you know, India, Pakistan, where there's high degree of Muslim population. So it's a known problem that girls are being murdered or forced to commit suicide in their own household. And right now, the drug of choice is warfarin, blood thinner. The police know this, Peel Regional, Toronto, whatever. I've talked to them, and they tell me something really fascinating. They say they know what's going on, and they're working on it. But getting into the community is very hard because you can't get witnesses, no one wants to talk. Even if you talk to the sister of a girl who's been murdered, essentially, or forced to commit suicide, you can only meet her off-site, you can't meet her in uniform, and she's terrified. If somebody sees her talking to an outsider, that'll get back to her father, her uncle. So here's the thrust of the matter. When I talk to the police at the front end level, and I worked for the RCMP for 6 years, and I've worked with a variety of police forces, these guys and these gals tell me that when they go to their supervisors at the inspector level or the superintendent level and say, we need more resources, we need to get out into the community, they get told, yes, you're right, we need to do this. And that layer of management in most police forces is still white, male, and mostly Christian. But they have no problem going after it. Where it dies and where they get no support is at the chief level and at the police board level. When it gets promoted to that level, it dies because, oh, well, we can't touch that. That's cultural. We can't touch that. That's religious. The politicians have got the chiefs of police so terrified, they don't even talk about this stuff. Chief Bordelot in Ottawa, when he was asked about all the shootings occurring in Ottawa right now, said he had no idea what was causing the increase in shootings. And everybody just kind of like, okay, you know.
Well, there you go, folks. Islam has made Ontario famous. We are the world's capital for assisted honor-killing suicides. Isn't that great? Thanks, Islam. We appreciate the international notoriety of being #1 in the world for assisted suicides. Thanks. Isn't multiculturalism great?
There was a reason that Trudeau did all of this. Like I said, he saw the writing on the wall. He saw that what was coming was going to be world government. And Mr. Trudeau was what they called a closet communist. And he believed that the people had didn't really have a right to have any say in how they were governed. He believed
so he was one of those top-down kind of guys.
Top-down kind of guys. And so Trudeau saw the writing on the wall that world government was coming. And world government was meant to be snuck in. It's not there's no democracy here with world government. What Trudeau did is he went under the Canada Act, he went to a foreign government because Canada wasn't a sovereign nation. And hence he needed a foreign government to incorporate, to create a charter for a Corp Canada, because
a corporation
called Canada. And so he went with the Canada Act over to the UK, went to the Queen, foreign Queen, and she took it to her foreign parliament because they have constitutional monarchy over there. And he had chartered, that's what happens when you create a corporation, you charter a company, and he chartered Canada, and it's called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
That's why we need this movie to come out. And that's why we need to stand up against the NWO and make sure that their plans do not succeed. Because we have the power. We, the people, have the power.